officer for a little over 16 years now. In that time, I've worked many different assignments to include patrol, training, community services, and detectives. Part of my extra duties are teaching use of force to include shooting range related stuff, which is also including of our active shooter related program. So that includes training officers and also putting on trainings such as this for the community members so that they can be aware of how to respond and what to do when an active shooter or should an active shooter arise in the area. So bear with me for just a second as I get the PowerPoint up and running here. We will continue on. There'll be some discussion at the end. Feel free to ask anything and everything, and we'll get it taken care of at that point. Just want to confirm, is the slides up and running? You guys can see them?
Not yet.
No.
It takes a little bit.
I think I forgot to hit the share. There we go. Okay.
There we go. We can see it.
Okay, perfect. All right. So as I said, I'm an active shooter instructor. I teach law enforcement as well as give presentations to the community members. So here you go. Here's our title page. Anyway, this is my information. If you wanted to jot that down, it's also currently on the City of Menifee Police website. You guys can find me on there. Also, my patrol lieutenant, and who's also in charge of running our training, is Lieutenant Gutierrez. He can also be reached. There's his email there. I think you guys probably already have all that information. So continue on. So today we'll have a presentation. This is kind of a quick overview here. We may or may not adhere to it. Depends on how many questions I think you all are going to have at the end based off what's talked about, or how long it takes to get through these slides. But anyway, 30 minutes or so for the slides. There'll be a video in the middle of the slides, Q&A at the end. So we'll kind of go over these things here: an active shooter killer incident. What's the historical perspective? What's been the history of this in the U.S.? We'll cover a couple instances, and you'll see that there's quite a few just recently. And there's many, many more. A quick Google search will lead you to links that have all the different active shooter incidents that have taken place throughout the U.S., throughout the world. And it's kind of scary to see how often this type of thing is really taking place. But we'll talk about the mindset that the officers are going to have when they arrive on scene, the mindset that you as community members should have in order to help you survive what's going to be taking place, what you should do when you call 911, what you should do when you're on scene and officers arrive, basic first aid type stuff that you guys can perform yourselves, as well as what the officers and other emergency personnel on scene might be providing, and evacuations. Trying to have a plan in place ahead of time, because making up something in an emergency is never a good plan. And wellness and taking care of yourself after the fact, because obviously this is likely to be if you are involved in one of these, likely to be one of the most traumatic experiences in your life, and it's important to make sure that you take care of that and make sure that your life's taken care of so that you can hopefully go back to some type of normalcy. The U.S. government definition for an active shooter is an individual or individuals actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. In most cases, active shooters use firearms, and there's really no pattern or method to their selection of victims. It's an active shooter / active killer because should somebody want to kill a bunch of people and they go, say, into a mall or other crowded area and they have a large knife or a machete or an axe or a chainsaw, they're likely to be able to kill a handful of people, just as maybe not as many as they could with a firearm because the range is a little bit limited, but they still could be able to kill somebody. So I know when we think about these mass casualty incidents, we generally think somebody with firearms, but it's not always firearms. And we'll talk about when we go over the historical perspective, one or two that include other means of a weapon that somebody used to kill people. So anyway, here's the historical perspective. So the kind of the one that got everybody's attention, even though there had been a few around the world and even in the U.S. prior to that, the one that got all the big attention and really brought this topic to light was the Columbine High School in Colorado in 1999. So it was a school shooting and attempted bombing that occurred April 20th, 1999 in Columbine, Colorado. Perpetrators were two 12th grade senior students. They murdered 12 students and one teacher. 10 of the students were killed in the school library, while the pair subsequently then committed suicide. 21 additional people were injured by those gunshots, and gunfire was also exchanged by the police. This incident was also kind of the kickoff to adjusting how law enforcement responds to active shooter, active killer incidences, because up until this point, if something extreme like this was taking place, standard patrol, which is the uniformed guys driving around in the cars every single day, what their kind of marching orders were and what their training and experience up to this point is that if something serious is taking place like this, where somebody has guns inside of a building and they're shooting, patrol's response was simply to surround it so that the people couldn't escape, call the SWAT team, and wait for the SWAT team, which are the police, to show up, and with their armored vehicles and assault rifles and their heavier armor, flash grenades, chemical agents, they're more militaristic style equipment that handles more serious issues. So it took them, I think, about an hour to 2 hours before the SWAT team was able to arrive. In that time, the amount of students that I talked about were killed. Now, that being said, it didn't take the two students that were in there shooting people and killing people. It didn't take them 2 hours to kill all those people. They kind of took care of that right away. But had the police responded the way that we do nowadays, it would have been a lot different. We would have been able to save some people and stop the killing. So that was kind of the catalyst to start a different training regiment and to teach officers SWAT training and SWAT tactics, and get everybody patrol rifles so that they could go up against heavily armed individuals and try to stop killings that were taking place as soon as possible and save as much life as possible. So again, that's kind of the one that started everything and started the training and started everything that's come from that up to and including this training that we're putting on for community members. So next one on the list there, Sandy Hook Elementary in 2012. I know, I remember seeing this on the news in Newtown, Connecticut, where the 20-year-old Adam Lozana, he had some mental health issues, killed 26 people, including 20 children, 6 and 7-year-olds, and 6 adult staff members. Earlier that day, before he went over to the school, he killed his mom at their house before he headed out there, arrived at school. He committed suicide by shooting himself in the head prior to the police being able to get to him and making an arrest or stopping him from killing. So next one on the list there, another one from Colorado, the Aurora Century 16 movie theater in 2012. Happened in summer of 2012. Happened inside of a movie theater. Again, that's kind of a place where there's bound to be a lot of people, not many exits, and everybody's in close quarters. Happened to be the premiere screening for one of the Batman movies, The Dark Knight Rises. So it was a packed house. The suspect went into the movie theater, set off tear gas grenades, and then just started shooting into the audience. 12 people were killed during that time. 70 other people were injured, 58 of them from gunfire, and the rest because they were getting trampled and because it was just mass hysteria inside of the movie theater. It was at the time the deadliest shooting in U.S. history after the Columbine shooting. Lots of people got injured during that. Law enforcement learned some pretty good lessons from that one, because one of the issues that happened with law enforcement was that the police were so eager to get there, and they're at a large movie theater with a parking lot that has only a couple entrances and exits. We were there, police officers were there to try and stop the killing as quickly as they could. And what they did was they blocked all the entrances and they blocked all the roadways so that when it was time, or when they found that the shooter was done and now he was down and no longer killing people, and it was now time to start trying to provide medical attention to the injured people, that the streets were all blocked up in the parking lot, and it was very difficult, almost impossible for medical personnel to get in there. It ended up being where they had the stage nearby, and officers were loading people up in their units, driving them out to where they could meet with the medical personnel and then turn them over. So, we learned some lessons about when we arrive, making sure we park and stage in certain areas, and make sure we leave room for the other first responders who work hand in hand with us on these issues. Next one on the list is Isla Vista, California, near University of Santa Barbara, California. So in 2014, there was a mass killing incident by a 22-year-old Elliot Roger. He killed 6 people and injured 14 others. The 6 people he killed, 3 of them were his roommates. He stabbed them to death, killed them in their apartment. Then he left, got in his vehicle, ran over 2 people or killed them, and shot 1 person with a handgun that he had. The other people that he injured, he had run over with his car, and then also was kind of firing his handgun sporadically throughout the campus. So in the end, he was in a brief standoff where he shot himself in the head, killed himself. So that's one where a handgun was used, but also a knife was used to kill multiple people, as well as a vehicle used to kill multiple people. So next one down on the list is pretty close to home here, and happened in San Bernardino Social Services Facility in 2015. It was a terrorist attack, actually. Consisted of a mass shooting and an attempted bombing, which occurred at the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino. The 2 perpetrators were a married couple who had been living in the city of Redlands, and they targeted the San Bernardino County Department of Public Health training event and Christmas party that had about 80 employees who had rented a room. 14 people were killed and 22 others seriously injured. After the shooting, they fled in a rented car, which there was a long pursuit and a big shootout, and the SWAT teams were out there and armored vehicles chasing them just to try to end the chaos that they were creating. Then another one that's pretty close here to home, Thousand Oaks, California, at the Borderline Bar. Mass shooting happened there. The 13 people were killed, including the perpetrator, who died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and a police officer who was killed during that. And unfortunately, that was by friendly fire, just because of the amount of people trying to flee the scene as this killer was inside murdering people. So kind of a couple quick incidents that highlight everything that we've been going on and on about in the news media, and when it comes to active shooters, active killers that have been taking place in the country for however many years. So again, just a quick overview of that. There are, like I said, there's many more that feel free, if you're interested in knowing a little bit more about the history, you can look online. I believe kind of one of the initial, very first ones in U.S. history that's recorded. I can't remember I think it's in the 60s or 70s, the gentleman that was shooting out of the bell tower on one of the Texas college campuses. He shot multiple people from the bell tower that were walking around out there on campus. But I believe that was kind of the initial one here in the U.S. These are some of the locations that it takes place. I realize that if you add up these percentages, they're going to add up to over 100%. What this comes down to is these statistics were taken kind of from multiple different sources, to include the government, the FBI, City of New York, a couple college studies on different things. So they vary, but you kind of get the idea for where a lot of this stuff takes place. So schools, 24 to 34% of the time. I know when we think of active shooters, active killers, we generally tend to think of schools as the main place that this is taking place at. But if you look down to the next line, you'll see that businesses, a workplace violence type thing, 37 to 45%. Everybody's kind of worked with somebody where, we maybe thought, oh, well, I hope that guy doesn't have a bad day or something. And, unfortunately, those businesses tend to be the place where it takes place the most. There was, at the previous agency I worked for in a neighboring city, they had a large mail U.S. postal mail sorting facility, and when probably within my first couple of years of being an officer, there was a mass shooting that had taken place at that sorting facility. So, a business one, and like we talked about in a couple of these other during the history, they took place at businesses also. So, other that can include anything: stores, shops, parking lots, that type of thing. Outdoors, be it at parks, large outdoor places, and taking place at multiple locations, like the one we just discussed last, the second to last one, the San Bernardino, where they had the initial shooting, killing over at the Christmas party, and then they drove around in their vehicles, or somebody might do something at wherever they went, and then they go back to their house and have a shootout with law enforcement officers. But it can basically happen anytime, any place. There is no rhyme or reason a lot of times, other than the workplace violence related ones, just because usually the person goes back to their particular place of work. But otherwise, there's really an equal chance of anything happening at any location if the one criteria is met, which happens to be a large amount of people in an area that is, possibly somewhat confined, but they're just looking for large groups of people to try and inflict pain and suffering on. As of 2019, the U.S. Census said Menifee has 94,756 residents, 46 plus square miles, multiple public and private schools throughout the city. I think there's roughly 30 schools or so, plus or minus a little bit here within the city limits. We have one college campus, multiple public parks, obviously multiple shopping centers, with many more on the way in the next couple of years, industrial centers, business districts. So what we had just talked about previously, the different locations that all these things could take place on, Menifee has all of it, and we have a rather quickly growing population, which, heaven forbid it happens here. But we definitely want to be ready if it happens, and we have all the checklists ready for what they may or may not want for an active shooter to kick off. So, with mindset and stopping the shooter. So, law enforcement has a little bit of a different take on it than the citizen population is going to have. Obviously, there is somebody that is victimizing the citizen population by killing them with whatever means that they're using. It's the goal of law enforcement to first and foremost stop the killing. Obviously, we carry medical supplies with us to an extent, not the same amount that, say, the fire department or paramedics or ambulance drivers carry, but we do carry some of that. But unfortunately, providing medical aid is secondary to stopping the threat, because it doesn't do us any good to work on one person to the detriment of multiple other people. So first things first, we have to stop the shooter. So law enforcement's first and primary goals are these. We basically have to intervene with whatever type of force, deadly force if necessary, on the suspect, and then after that, rescue as many people as possible. So the way that we train is we train in basically finding this person and stopping them from killing any more people. Those are generally going to be the first handful of officers to arrive on scene. First 3 or 4 officers on scene might form a group. It could be one officer. One officer might be there by themselves for several minutes going after an active killer. And that's what we train, and that's what we expect. We expect them to be able to go and stop whatever it is that is hurting people, so that we can make sure we save as many people as possible. So should the initial responding officers that are looking for the suspect determine they need extra help, the next few responding officers will meet up with them, and they will all continue on to search and stop whatever deadly threat is still out there. After that, there's going to be Paramedics, firefighters are going to be arriving on scene, and they're going to be staging. I know in California, everybody's pretty much started training what we call rescue task forces. And what those are, it's combined with law enforcement with emergency medical personnel. And what they do is that group will not go into what's considered the hot zone, which is where there might be active. The hot zone would be considered, someplace where there's active gunfire, where there's an active gunfight taking place, or where we know for a fact we have the suspect locked down and he's not going to escape. And, we're trying to either get him to surrender, or, we're trying to end the standoff however we can. That being said, that area is going to be considered a hot zone. After that, as you kind of branch out away from that, those are what's going to be considered warm and cold zones. The cold zone is going to have the emergency medical aid station, if you will, set up there, where we're going to be, triaging injured people, determining who needs to be loaded up, and there's going to be plenty of medical personnel to kind of help take care of them. And then what I mentioned earlier with the rescue task forces is that's where the paramedics and the firefighters are going to be geared up in body armor and helmets along with the police, and they're going to be going into the area that could still be dangerous. And it's just not as safe as a cold zone, because that's likely where people that are shot and injured who need help and can't self-evacuate still are located. So they'll go in there and they're going to be rescuing people, providing medical aid, trying to get people to see if they can walk in and out, and trying to save as many lives as possible, which is what the second point on the slide is: rescue as many of the shooting victims as possible. So again, as we're there, we're going to prioritize our duties, which is stop the shooters, rescue the victims, and provide medical assistance. Those two kind of go hand in hand. Last in that is preserve the crime scene. Obviously, there is a crime taking place. It's a multiple homicide scene. We are going to need to process that and do that, but collecting evidence and taking care of that is very far and down the road compared to trying to save as many people as possible. While we're out there on scene, the way that we prioritize our lives is, victims and civilians. They're both basically prioritized the same, and where their life is paramount, and we're there to save them, and we're there to put our own life in danger if we need to help rescue these people or save these people. Then it's us after the civilians and the victims, law enforcement, where, if one of our partners gets shot, we're going to throw them a tourniquet or a chest seal or whatever they need to take care of themselves, and we're going to continue on, because we have to prioritize the saving of the innocent people that are involved in this. And then the lowest, or at the end of the list for the prioritization of life, is the suspect. We still respect that. If they want to surrender, then they can surrender, and we'll make an arrest, and that will start the next process on down the road. But should they decide that they don't want to be arrested and either take their own life or engage in a gunfight with us, that's completely up to them. We obviously don't have control over their actions, and they do have control over their actions. They're the ones that are choosing to do what they're doing. They're the ones that are choosing whether or not to stop killing innocent people. They're the ones that are choosing whether to give up and surrender or to fight it out with law enforcement. And because they're the ones that actually have the most choice in this, and they're deciding what they want to do, that's, they can choose to stop at any point in time and walk out of it alive. But if they choose not to, and they choose to get in a gunfight, then, it generally will end the way that most of the historical perspectives do, which is with them being deceased. So anyway, so that's kind of the law enforcement mindset. We're there to stop the threat and rescue people. And that's pretty much it. So law enforcement has a little bit different mindset. And, then there's you guys. You guys are the civilians, the community members, obviously are going to be part of what's going on. And you guys need to know, we have formalized training where we run scenario-based training to train the officers with how to deal with large crowds of people, to how to engage suspects, how to move as a team, how to work together and everything. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of formalized training for the community members, other than, say, go on YouTube and type in, how do I survive an active shooter or active shooter response for civilians, and you maybe watch a couple videos that some people put together, and one of those videos we'll watch here a little bit later. It's a well-made video, and it has a lot of good information for how citizens and community members should respond in an active shooter. So the civilian response to an active shooter, obviously completely different than law enforcement. Law enforcement, we run towards the threat. If we're hiding, we're hiding behind a cover position while we are trying to not get shot or trying to keep safe as we are engaged in the fight with the person. So law enforcement in a way does run, hide, fight, but we do it in the way where we're moving towards a threat. So for civilians, run, hide, fight means exactly what you think it is. If you have the ability and the means to run away from the scene, that's your best bet. Run as far away as you can. If you're not there, you can't get injured, you can't get killed. If for whatever reason you're not capable of running and you're not capable of fleeing the scene, then your next best course of action is to hide. I think everybody here in the United States can say we've probably watched too many action movies where people think they can fight bad guys and do things. A lot of us in the real world have never been in a hand-to-hand fight with somebody who was intending to hurt us, let alone somebody intending to kill us. It's a completely different animal, and if you're not appropriately training for it, there's no way that it's going to work. So that's why we say, run first. If you can, hide, and we'll talk about the different ways to hide. And the last and final way that you can help to survive an active shooter will be fight, but that's only if you get cornered and you have no other option. So this here's a video. We'll take a few minutes to watch this. It's pretty good. It's got a lot of good information, fairly realistic, and so here we go.
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally, life feels more like an action movie than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important: you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
All right, so you saw that's a video. Hopefully this works now. All right, there we go. So some good information, expanded a little bit on what I was just talking about, and we'll go over a couple other pointers here. Running's pretty self-explanatory, although running could be problematic if you're not necessarily familiar with where you're at. So it's always a good idea to kind of pay attention to wherever it is that you're at, pay attention to exit signs, where you came in, whatever the fastest way out to a different exit is if you have to, because you can't go out the same way that you came in. Just really need to pay attention to your surroundings. That's a big one. When running or when hiding, if you have to call 911, do so only when safe. Okay? Provide as much information as possible. You're probably going to get yelled at by the dispatcher. You're going to be obviously very frantic if you're involved in one of these situations, and you want to be able to provide the information that law enforcement officers will need to stop the threat as quickly as they can. And we like to have information such as what the person looks like, where they were last seen, what they're wearing, what they're carrying with them, ways that we can identify them and find them quickly. We need to get that information. Dispatch will also be asking where you're at. So pay attention again, like I just mentioned, to wherever it is that you're at, because we're going to need that information to get help to you who might have injured persons with them, or might be able to direct other incoming resources as to where they need to go. So again, call 911 only when safe to do so. If you are running, focus on running. I know the video said leave your stuff behind. If you do, great. please don't carry multiple things that keep you from running. But if you're going to grab your phone, that's an item that can help you and other people out if you do take that with you. So please try to remember to take your phones. Again, when talking to the dispatcher, provide as much info as possible. Like I was saying before, you might get yelled at. They might tell you to stop talking and to answer their questions. Please answer their questions, because they know what questions asked. They know what information we're going to need. So the quicker we can get those questions answered, the faster we can have information, and the better we can take care of the threat that's taking place out there. Obviously, everybody knows 911. If depending on where you're at, they could be a different number that you need. It's always good to know the business lines or the direct lines that get you into the dispatch center or to the police department, because 911 might be busy. That might be a way that you're able to talk to somebody to get some help. And over the last couple years, the law enforcement has developed the text to 911 system. You can actually text 911. We ask that you only do that for emergency purposes, because obviously you can't text as quickly as you can talk, and you can't answer questions through text as quickly as you can talk on the phone. Calling's obviously always the best option, but run, hide, fight. Should you be hiding somewhere and you can't talk, you're hiding in a closet, you're locked up somewhere, texting is a viable option, and that can get us valuable information also. But when in doubt, call 911. Hopefully the lines will be open if a crazy incident like this is taking place, and we can get the information we need to best serve and take care of what's going on at the scene. Sorry, my computer's going a little slow. I'm trying to click over. There we go. Considerations for fighting. Again, like I mentioned, unless you do fight training or have your own weapon, obviously I'm a police officer. I carry a gun with me everywhere I go. That being said, if I was stuck in the middle of an active shooter, I have a gun with me. I don't have much else. I don't have my body armor. I don't have my radio. I don't have much else that's law enforcement related other than the gun. So when you are faced with, you can't run and you're hiding, and if you get found hiding and you have to fight, fight like your life depends on it, because it does. This person has already shot and killed or stabbed, or however they've killed multiple people, and now you're directly in front of them. You will be next. So you have two choices: sit there and let it happen to you, or take the fight to them. These are some things that can be used as weapons here. May or may not be around the office. Anything. Some staplers are really heavy. A heavy water bottle, your computer monitor, anything that could hurt the person, you just start ripping it out and throwing it at the person, because that's what you're going to need to do to survive. First aid. Not everybody walks around or carries around first aid kits. I can tell you my personal life, I don't carry one around on my body all the time. I do have a large first aid trauma kit that I keep with me in my truck that includes a lot of the stuff that's here on the list: tourniquets, chest seals, pressure dressings, gauze, things that you can pack wounds with and stop the bleeding. Unless somebody gets shot in the face or in the heart, there's a high likelihood that if we get you to a hospital and get you emergency medical treatment within an hour of getting injured, there's like a 99.9% survival rate. So that being said, first aid is kind of everybody's responsibility. If it's at your workplace, trauma kits around different areas are a good idea that include these items. And that way you're able to treat yourself, because law enforcement or paramedics, fire department might not be able to get to you. Something else to remember when we get there, law enforcement gets there, you're probably going to be frantic. It's understandable. Try to remember not to grab on the officers and yell, "Save me, help me." We are going to push you off of us and continue on. It's best to answer our questions. We're probably going to be asking you questions as we come up to you. Where'd they go? What are they wearing? What are they carrying? How many are there? So as you can see up here, suspect info, number of suspects, any people that you had seen injured laying around anywhere, what kind of weaponry, if you know anything about weaponry, we'll ask you those questions. But a big thing is try not to grab onto us, and like we're in the middle of the ocean and you're drowning. We're not going to be able to help you. We have to be able to help everybody else. If you're clinging to us, it means you're probably able to run. And again, you should go back to run, hide, fight. You can run away to a safe designated area that's far enough away that you know you're not going to encounter the shooter, but you're still kind of nearby to help law enforcement after the fact. You'll be given clear instructions by law enforcement. You know, if we're pulling you out of a building, or if you're running to us, you know, say go out to the next officer, keep your hands safe. If you're at your workplace, hopefully your workplace has something in place already for where you should leave in case of like an earthquake or any other kind of emergency where everybody meets up, because you do want to do kind of a head count at the end of one of these incidents. You want to be able to say, well, you know, Larry's missing, or Sam's missing, or Sally's missing. You want to be able to say that so that law enforcement, we know who we're going to be looking for, or how many people we might be looking for that are injured inside the building or at the location still. If you can, as you come towards us, keep your hands as high as possible. If you can remember that, just because, you know, nobody's shooting guns with their feet or their knees, or they're out of their waistband. You know, anybody that uses a weapon uses it with their hands. If we can see that your hands are free, you know, we'll ask you the questions. Where's the guy? Where are they? Where are they going? What are they carrying? Answer the questions and keep on going to, you know, a possible designated location you have already set up, or an area where the law enforcement officers have told you where to go. Continuing with evacuation, you know, we'll announce. It'll be obvious that we're there. We'll be wearing uniforms. Officers are going to direct you where to go. In the aftermath of all this, hopefully, if it's your place of business or school or whatever, there'll be some kind of counseling sessions, things afterwards. But you know, check on each other, take care of each other. Everybody has coworkers or people around them that they really care about, and you want to make sure that everybody's kind of taken care of and that everybody is supported. Should you need to, you know, seek out counseling, group support, anything like that, anything to help heal your mind. And if your body's injured, heal your body, because you know, bodies heal, but minds take a lot longer to heal. So it's very important to make sure you take care of your wellness and things related to that. And remember, always try to be aware of your surroundings. We all have that sixth sense, that feeling where the hair stands up on the back of our neck, or we just don't feel easy about something. We feel uneasy about it. It's important to always be aware of your surroundings. I know in this digital age, everybody has their faces glued to cell phones, and people just aren't aware of things. So sometimes it's important to keep your phone in your pocket and enjoy what's taking place around you, and paying attention to what's taking place around you, because it could really save your life. Should you come into a life or death situation, have a mindset of survival. Like, I'm going to make it. I'm going to live. No matter what happens, I'm surviving this. I have a family to get home to. I got friends to get home to. You, whoever it is, whatever it is that helps you survive, that's what you need to survive. And in the end, what it comes down to is most people are not going to have the equipment and the training necessary to take the fight to one of these people. They're generally fairly determined, which is why they prepare so well with their weaponry, with how they carry their equipment. They plan these things out, which is why when you look at the historical perspective, some of these where law enforcement during the investigation after the fact, they found an awful lot of pre-planning. And you know, when somebody pre-plans something, it makes it that much more effective when they're out there. So just remember to run, hide, fight, and everything that goes along with that. So that ends the PowerPoint. Let's see if we can get this camera stuff up and running. All right, I have my camera on. Can you guys still hear and see me?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Of course, you're very welcome. Happy to always help. I know we kind of covered a lot, and some of it was pretty generalized. At this point, you know, feel free to ask me any questions that you like about anything. I'll give you whatever answers I can, whatever answers my opinions are, industry standard. Some of what I say at this point could be a little shocking to hear, but what it comes down to, it's the reality. So feel free to ask away.
Yeah, hi, hi, Sergeant. My name is David Faust. So most of us are probably very familiar with our surroundings where we work, whether or attend school. But could you speak a little bit more about situational awareness in public spaces?
Sure. I see it every day, and I'd mentioned just a second ago about cell phones. Cell phones are the #1 detractor of people paying attention to what's going on around them. Everybody wants to either take a picture of something or they're sending a message to something. I'm still kind of young, but I went to high school and college, and there was no cell phones. So I remember like having people's phone numbers memorized, and you had to know where you were driving to. And I got my Thomas guide out, and I paid attention to everything that was going on around me. And so I still kind of have a hard time like having my face glued to a phone. I just don't. But as I drive around every day, I look over and I see somebody in their car. They're playing around on their phone. Somebody walking into a store, they're talking on the phone. People just don't pay attention to anything. So I'd say first and foremost, you can't walk around thinking there's an active shooter event that's going to take place every second of every day. If you did that, nobody'd ever leave their house. You'd live in a concrete bunker and have all kinds of weaponry. So you still do have to live your life, but the odds of an active shooter / active killer taking place, very slim. The odds of being victimized, a bit higher, especially, we see it in the news every day, these random attacks that are taking place. I would be willing to say probably half of them, if you watched surveillance video or whatever they had, would show these people having their face stuck in their phone, or they just wouldn't be paying attention to what's going on. The other half, I've seen plenty where people just get completely blindsided. So, those are really unfortunate too. So as far as situational awareness, I always like to park far away from a store. If there's a mad rush for everybody to get out, nobody's just going to run. Everybody's going to run to their car and try to get out. At least if, that old Chevy Chase movie Vacation, where they pull up to the parking lot's empty and he parks at the end. He says, well, when everybody's rushing to get out of here, we're going to be the first ones out too, because we're right here by the exit. So it's kind of like that, pay attention to things, prepare things. Nobody ever wants to walk far to a store or walk away, especially in this heat. But, that could be something to pay attention to. Also, it'll prevent your car from getting dings and dents on it, which is kind of nice. When you're inside of a store, a paper list is a lot less distracting than a digital list on your phone. Just kind of paying attention to who's up and down the aisles. As soon as you turn an aisle, take a look all the way at the end, see who else is there. When you're halfway up, take a look behind you. When you're at the end, kind of pay attention, go out slowly. Just, I guess, try not to go through life like a bull in a china shop. Take a second to pay attention and look around, and really just pay attention to what's going on and who's around you, because the ghosts aren't committing these acts of violence against other people. It's people. So you just kind of pay attention to stuff. And like I had mentioned, having the sixth sense about you think something's wrong. If you think something's wrong, get out of the area. It is what it is. Nothing says that you have to confront people or talk to people or tell them, hey, I think you're up to no good. You just take care of yourself, take care of others, but just kind of keeping your head up, looking around, thinking that, if something happens, if this place catches on fire and I'm here, how am I getting out of here? Know where exits are in places. As you walk into a restaurant, look, to see where the green or red emergency exit sign is. Like, okay, if I need to, I can get out here. How often are planes crashing? Not that often, but what do they do at the beginning of every plane flight? It's like, here are the exits, pay attention to where they're at, because like, if that happens, like, that's a serious emergency, and they want you to know what's closest to you. So I guess take that advice into every situation you're in, like always have an escape route or an escape plan. And that kind of helps with situational awareness. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you, Sergeant. Appreciate it.
I have a question. Can I jump in, Vanessa?
Go for it.
So I am a 6th grade teacher, Lake Elsinore District, and I've been given the great opportunity to teach my staff. And of course, I do all the disaster drills with the kids. I get to teach the staff active shooter.
Okay.
I was wondering your suggestions on how could I start, and can I give them the link to your video? I've seen the video before, and the PowerPoint. And what's your, for schools, what would be the priority to teach? They won't let me teach the students yet. They say it's too scary.
Yeah.
And so I've been given permission to teach just the teachers, which is, high priority.
Yeah.
But I need to start somewhere, and I've been doing this for 30 years, so I kind of am like, can we just get it taught? Because I know it's really important for kids to discuss it as well.
So my first thing with, yeah, I mean, obviously you can use the video. It's a YouTube video.
Yeah.
As far as the PowerPoint, I don't see why I couldn't give it to you. Or you could play this video that we have here. I think Vanessa's putting it online, so you can play me and listen to me drone on for 40 minutes on the PowerPoint, and
That's what they say about me.
it happens, right? So those are good starting points. I guess my first question, because this is one of the things, because I've done presentations for schools and I've done presentations for businesses, and generally before I even show up and do a presentation, I do like a security walkthrough. So I guess the first question would be is, do you guys have any ways to actually like lock and secure your classroom doors? If you do, okay, good. So what it's going to come down to is, if like on a school campus, I don't know what yours is set up like, but if it's anything similar to all these, it's not like it's all inside. There's some outside stuff. So if the person's, say, walking through the middle, and you hear gunshots and everybody just starts screaming and running out the doors, you're going to have 1,000 people out in the middle of the area where this guy can now start shooting anybody and everybody there. So generally for schools, your best bet is, if you are able to find out where on campus it is, like if it starts on the west side of campus and you're on the east side, okay, yeah, we got plenty of time to run away. We're going to run half a mile away down the street and we're going to hide over here. If it shows up at your front door first, and unfortunately, like the guy kicks open your door and starts shooting people in there, you're in fight mode, and you're going to be throwing desks, and you're going to be doing whatever. Obviously there's one teacher and a bunch of students. You're going to have to recruit the students to fight back, is what it comes down to, or every single person in that room is likely to be killed. For everybody in between, it really depends. If you think you're going to be able to run and not get killed, that's your best bet. If you're not, locking doors and being quiet and getting away from windows and having everything shut up so that the person can't see in there is your best bet. These guys are opportunists. There isn't really any, if any, that I've read that documented cases where these guys are kicking open doors and forcing open locks and like bringing breaching equipment to try and get into classrooms. They're kind of like these guys that roll around in the middle of the night. Like if you leave your car unlocked, your stuff's going to get stolen. If you lock your car, it doesn't. And it's kind of the same thing with this. We saw in the video, the guy started checking doors and he's walking on. That's kind of what they do. They're looking for opportunity. They're not looking to work hard. So if you can secure your door to where they can't get in, they're likely to check the handle, jiggle it, it's not working, and they don't see anything blatantly obvious. They're going to move on. Now, you hope that they're just not walking around shooting through the windows and shooting through the walls. And history has told us that they don't generally do that either. So locking your doors is your best bet. Having multiple pre-designated areas for evacuees to go to is a good thing. And the reason being is because if you don't, you'll spend days trying to find out what happened to these students when they fled, like they ran away, and it's like, Mom, this is what's going on. And the mom's like, oh my God, and drives over there right away and picks them up and takes them home. It's like, we're not going back to school, and we're just going to stay here because I don't want this person coming to our house. That's what people think. Like this guy's going to show up at their front door. Like they had a list and their kid was on it. Not really how it happens. So good that you guys have ways to lock the doors. That's awesome. A lot of schools don't do that. They're like, no, we're not going to spend the money to do that.
We do lockdown drills, and we do them like they're real. That's as far as they let me do with the students. But students know, bad guy outside, we're locking down.
Good.
phones off, blinds closed, lights off,
Yeah.
doors locked, nice and quiet, don't move. And then the biggest thing is when if that were to happen and it was at a recess or a lunchtime, where do the kids run? And we've had open door policies. And then it's the who's where. And you know, it's like you can't go to the last class who just checked you in because you could be on the other side of campus. So schools are tough because we have, you know, 1,200 kids.
You got kids everywhere, and it's going to look like, you know, just people running everywhere. I mean, probably all your students can climb a fence. Like if that's, you know, that's something, if you're out on recess and you start hearing something on the other side of campus, like climb the fence and run away.
Yep.
And, you know, maybe have a couple areas around, like within, you know, a quarter mile of the campus where it's like, hey, you know, that everybody knows where that big yellow house is up the street. Like, cool, everybody go up there. So have some meeting locations to where responsible people from the school can, you know, if something like this happens, they can start shooting out to those areas and being like, okay, kids, let's go. Rally points are really good, that kind of thing. If the school doesn't have it, hopefully maybe you do. We talked briefly about medical related supplies, trauma kits to include like tourniquets, chest seals, pressure dressings, gauze, things that are pretty easy to use, some rubber gloves. That stuff's not super duper expensive. And, you know, if the school's not going to buy it, then, you know, it could be something that the teachers, if they want, they could, you know, I know you got teachers spend their own money on stuff all the time. So if you, you know, $100 would get you something that lasts you forever. And it's kind of like, okay, you could take it on a camping trip or a hiking trip too with your family, and something happens, you can use it there. So that's good. And that will allow you to really save some lives should somebody get shot in the arm or, you know, the torso or something like that. And you can use your medical supplies to treat that.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Corey. I appreciate it.
Of course.
We have one more question, and Ken.
You're muted, Ken.
Ken, you're still muted.
No, he's just here. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Sorry. Good afternoon again.
Hi.
So this kind of goes to the hide, run, and fight theory.
Yeah.
So in the fight theory, a few weeks ago there was a mass shooting in Texas where an officer was killed.
Yeah.
Now the guy, the hero, was killed also by police. How, if you were forced into that type of situation, how should someone address the police, you know, in that high stress, you know, people shooting, and you know you've taken out the violent person. How would you, you know, let the police know, hey, I'm a good guy, not a bad guy, don't kill me?
Yeah. So all the different officers I've spoken with that have been in shootings, and they've, you know, after the suspect was shot and on the ground, one of the things they told me was none of them wanted to put their guns away, and they all wanted to point it at the bad guy in case they started moving again. The same thing's probably going to be true for, you know, what you had just brought up, where a guy, he's, you know, a concealed carry person, or say an active shooter's happening outside of his house and he goes and grabs his gun and takes care of it. You know, hey, good on you guys for, you know, taking care of stuff, because everybody knows the cops can't be everywhere. So, you know, if you're able to, you know, most people are not able to take the fight to somebody, but if you are able to take the fight to somebody and you can win, you know, awesome. And, you know, we'll praise you for that. Unfortunately, yes, there is the chance that when law enforcement shows up, you could be confused for the suspect. quite frankly, if the police arrive and you still have a gun in your hand, there's really no way for us to tell that you are not the bad guy. We're going to be getting multiple phone calls. Obviously, we're not even going to be able to handle all the 911 calls that are coming in. And a lot of the stuff's going to be information that's mixed and matched, anywhere from, 1 to 5 people could be calling in saying that there's one shooter, there's 3 shooters, there's 2 shooters, there's a guy wearing this, there's a guy wearing that. So what I'd recommend for that is, if you're a concealed carry person, or you're the civilian that ends, or the community member that ends the active shooter, you have to protect yourself. So it's kind of one of those things where, make sure that the person's down and they're not going to get back up. And at that point, you're probably going to have to move away from them, put your gun down on the ground so that you don't have any guns in your hands, and you're going to need to stand off to the side with your hands where law enforcement can see them. There's a high likelihood that law enforcement will probably point guns at you, tell you to get down on the ground, put you in handcuffs until we find out what's going on. That being said, obviously at that point, it's best to not argue with the police when they arrive. Do what we say, because we're now responding to an active shooter where people are getting shot. We don't know who you are. We don't know what you've done. We don't know if you're a good guy or a bad guy. Everybody gets equal treatment, and we have to make sure that we're safe and that we're stopping the killing that's taking place. And it sounds like this guy was a really unfortunate casualty, where had he maybe thrown his gun down prior to the police arriving, or at a minimum, he doesn't want to put it on the ground, reholsters and covers it up, and then stands there with his hands where the officers can see it. That's really the only way to kind of avoid something like that. Because even if you have a vest on, or you got yourself a shirt that says security, or you're yelling, "I didn't do it," something along those lines, we don't trust anybody in those particular situations with anything. So everybody's going to get the same treatment: guns pointed at them and told to get down on the ground so we can handcuff you. Just comply and don't have a gun in your hand is the best advice I can say.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.